Hey everyone, welcome to Six Path Weeb. I'm thrilled to have you here on my channel. Today, we dive into a brand new fanfic adventure titled, Naruko, Kurama's Timebound Legacy, a reimagined journey through the shinobi world like you've never seen before. Disclaimer, this content is created purely for entertainment and thoughtful discussion. I do not own any of the anime footage featured in this video. All rights and credits belong to their respective creators and copyright holders. Alright, let's jump right in. Steel clashed with steel, sending out a burst of sparks. Naruko snapped to attention just as a shuriken embedded itself into the tree she stood on. She leapt away in the nick of time, her heart pounding with confusion. What was happening? Why hadn't she sensed this earlier? She landed gracefully on a nearby branch and instinctively tried to use chakra to stabilize herself. But instead of securing her footing, the branch erupted beneath her feet, sending her crashing to the forest floor. That explosion. Only Konoha's trees, enhanced with wood-style chakra, behaved like that. She was definitely in the Hidden Leaf Village. Loud voices interrupted her thoughts. You saw those eyes earlier. Those were the eyes of a monster. That voice, it felt oddly familiar. And the tone. Harsh, accusatory. She hadn't heard anyone speak about her like that in a long time. Naruko got to her feet and quietly crept toward the voices, moving with practiced stealth. A strange scent lingered in the air, something metallic and earthy, but she pushed the thought aside. Naruko. Isn't like that. Iruka-sensei? Naruko's brow furrowed. Was this a dream? A genjutsu, maybe? That would explain the disorientation. Usually Kurama helped her snap out of illusions like this. Speaking of which, where was the fox? Hello? She asked inwardly. A low rumble echoed from deep within her. Kurama's grumpy silence told her this wasn't a dream or illusion. If it were, she wouldn't be able to hear him. B had told her once that as long as a Jinchuriki was connected to their tailed beast, genjutsu wouldn't work on them. Well, it doesn't matter. I'll stop Naruko and take the scroll. You can wait your turn. Someone was threatening her. She sighed, not in fear, but in annoyance. There were more important things to worry about. Still, if this wasn't an illusion, what exactly was going on? She crept closer just in time to hear a struggle, taijutsu techniques being exchanged at high speed. She could recognize Iruka-sensei's fighting style, and whoever he was facing was no amateur. Naruko braced herself and leapt toward the source. She arrived just as Iruka dodged a powerful punch and used the attacker's momentum to send him flying into a tree. Mizuki. Of course. Mizuki retaliated with kunai, and the two clashed again, faster than Naruko could keep up with. Then, Mizuki retreated into the trees. Iruka quickly transformed into Naruko's likeness and made a dramatic show of fleeing through the forest. Really? Does Iruka-sensei think I'm like that? She pouted slightly, watching him flail around in imitation. Then, another Iruka emerged from the trees and shouted toward the fake Naruko. Hurry! Pass me the scroll, Mizuki is after it. Henged Iruka delivered a solid kick to the imposter, launching him into a tree trunk with impressive strength. Naruko couldn't help but grin. Why Naruko? How did you know I wasn't Iruka? Mizuki dropped his disguise. The real Iruka's eyes narrowed as he revealed himself too. Because I am Iruka. Mizuki smirked. I see. You'd even disguise yourself as her to protect her? Naruko frowned. This scene was oddly vivid for something imaginary. I won't hand the scroll over to someone like you, Iruka declared. You're a fool. Naruko and I are the same. Naruko rolled her eyes. That was quite a stretch. Iruka blinked, confused. The same? If she uses the skills in that scroll, she could do anything. Not true, Naruko thought. Kurama didn't need human techniques, he once said he could cause tsunamis with a flick of his tail. The tailed beast would take advantage of it, Mizuki continued. Wrong again. Kurama had no interest in forbidden jutsu. That was more her style, if she was being honest. But Naruko is different, Iruka said firmly. She may be clumsy, and people don't always see her efforts, but she's one of my most promising students. She already understands the pain of being misunderstood. She's not what you think she is. Naruko's throat tightened. Iruka-sensei always had a way of reaching her. She is a true shinobi of the Hidden Leaf Village. Uzumaki Naruko. Tears pricked at the corners of her eyes. That's really sweet, sensei. Mizuki clenched his fists. Fine. I was going to deal with you later, Iruka, but I've changed my mind. Okay, time to intervene, Naruko thought. She dashed forward and delivered a clean kick that sent Mizuki flying out of Iruka's path. Iruka stared at her in shock, and Naruko allowed herself a little smile of satisfaction. "You shouldn't have done that," Mizuki growled. Naruko ignored him. "Don't you dare lay a hand on Iruka-sensei," she said firmly. The seriousness in her tone caught both adults off guard, a glimpse of a hardened shinobi shining in her bright eyes. "You shouldn't be here. Get away," Iruka yelled. "Don't worry about me," she called back. "I'm not going anywhere." Mizuki grinned. Big words for someone so young. "Let's see if you can back them up." Naruko raised a brow, already forming a plan. While spamming clones was always a favorite move, this didn't seem like the time for flashy tactics. But still. This was her world, even if imaginary. She could do what she wanted, right? "Come on then," she said, summoning her energy. "Let's finish this." Iruka's eyes widened, recognizing the serious nature of the jutsu. With a determined effort, he tried to move forward to protect Naruko. 100 kunai sped toward her, but Naruko's mind became sharply focused. Her hands moved swiftly and with precision. Kawarimi. Thunk. The sound of kunai striking a target reached Iruka's ears. "Naruko," he called out with concern. Mizuki's confident expression vanished as he collapsed awkwardly in front of Iruka. His flak jacket was embedded with kunai, and his eyes stared blankly, confused and stunned. Iruka stood frozen in place. Performing Kawarimi with a living being, especially from a distance, was extremely advanced. Naruko had truly mastered both transformation and substitution techniques. It was an excellent strategy, his trained ninja mind acknowledged. But then the teacher in him surged with concern. Was Naruko okay? Was this going to change her? Would her bright spirit remain? "Ah, sorry sensei, looks like the Anbu won't be able to ask him any questions now," Naruko said apologetically, scratching her head as she stood beside Mizuki. Iruka stared at her for a moment, then smiled warmly. "Naruko, come here. There's something I want to give you." He closed his eyes with trust. This was Naruko, after all. He felt a cool piece of cloth gently placed across his forehead. Opening his eyes, he saw her smiling. "Congratulations on graduating. Let's celebrate. I'll treat you to a bowl of ramen." Iruka's expression softened with pride. "But sensei, I still can't do a bunshine," Naruko said hesitantly. Iruka tapped his nose and replied, "You don't need that to become a ninja. The plan you came up with today was more than worthy of becoming a Jonin. And there are more advanced versions of that technique you'll learn from your Jonin sensei." Like Cage Bunshine, Naruko thought with a small smile. She hugged Iruka tightly around the waist, simply because she hadn't been able to in a while, then excitedly pulled him along, both laughing and talking about ramen. Now she had the perfect reason to double-check if this was really all happening. Maybe she could tell by the flavor. After all, no one could fake Ichiraku's ramen. The next day, she sat stiffly in front of the photographer, flashing a grin that was more teeth than joy as he took his time lining up the shot. The ramen had been amazing. Her apartment had felt just right. Everything had been exactly as it should be. Every book she read made sense. Every person she spoke with acted exactly like she remembered. It couldn't be a dream. No illusion could be this real. She even discovered things she hadn't known before, and they still fit with what she did know. "Hey, you sure you want to look like that?" the photographer asked uncertainly. "Yes," she replied flatly, patience wearing thin. "All right. Don't say I didn't warn you." "Okay. Cheese." Click. The Hokage stared at the ninja registration photo. Then he looked up at Naruko, who was beaming playfully. His silence now carried a hint of curiosity. "Do you like it, Grandpa? It took me forever to get it just right." Naruko chirped. "It's unique," the Hokage responded thoughtfully. "Retake it." "Why?" Naruko asked. "Because it doesn't look anything like you." "That's the point," she exclaimed. "How am I supposed to be an amazing ninja if someone figures out who I am too soon? This way, no one can tell it's me." "You're supposed to trust your own village," the Hokage said, puffing lightly on his pipe. "How will your Jonin sensei recognize you? Or future team leaders?" "Look underneath the underneath?" Naruko offered with a sheepish smile. The Hokage gave a faint smirk. "Well, at least you're thinking like a ninja now." He examined the photo again. It showed someone with vibrant red hair, a smooth, pale face, and playful details like eyeliner and a bold blue streak across the lips. It looked nothing like Naruko. "Henge?" he asked. Of course, Grandpa. Why red hair? Uzumakis are known for it, remember? I wanted to pay a little tribute. Databayo. Her eyes sparkled with amusement. The Hokage paused for a moment, then let it go. Just as he opened his mouth to say something more, the door burst open. A younger boy came charging in, shouting loudly. Old man. Let's spar, he declared, waving a shuriken, only to trip on his scarf and fall harmlessly. A jonin dressed in dark clothing rushed in after him, exasperated. The Hokage sighed and looked skyward as if calling for patience. Who set a trap? The boy asked, rubbing his head. Konohamaru, Naruko thought fondly. Her future student, in everything but name. He was still such a handful at this age. Are you okay? There's no trap in here. The jonin snapped. Naruko recognized him, Ebisu. He wasn't bad. In time, he would even risk his safety for Naruko's. As she noticed the slight frown on Ebisu's face, she sighed to herself. Why couldn't people already have the kindness they would develop later? Why did everything match so well to what she remembered? Time travel? Her thoughts spun in shock. I knew it. You did something, Konohamaru shouted at Naruko, but she was too caught up in her thoughts to notice. Huh? Did you say something? She replied automatically. The Hokage and Ebisu both sweat dropped. The Hokage thought dryly, Kakashi hasn't even met her yet, and she's already picking up his habits. Should I be concerned? Or is this destiny? Maybe I should ban Kakashi from reading his books near Naruko. You tripped me. Konohamaru accused, getting up to glare at Naruko, who finally snapped out of her daze and returned his look. Listen closely. If I had really wanted to make you stumble, things would have turned out far more embarrassing for you. Understand? Naruko said firmly. Don't talk to the Hokage's grandson like that, Ebisu snapped, stepping protectively in front of Konohamaru. Would Ebisu have still been assigned as his tutor if people had known I'm the fourth's daughter? Naruko wondered briefly. I'll speak to him the way he needs to be spoken to, Naruko replied calmly but confidently, before giving Konohamaru a light flick on the forehead and walking away. Later, as she was lost in thought about the possibilities of time travel, she noticed Konohamaru following her, rather obviously. Even though her reactions were sometimes a bit off, Naruko's instincts had always been strong. She had been through a lot, and that sharp awareness hadn't left her. Turning suddenly, she called out, You're not exactly blending in. What are you doing? Her heart tugged a little at the sight of him, it reminded her of how close they had once been. Hee. Pretty sharp. The stories about you are true. Konohamaru grinned. Wait, she had rumors that didn't involve the Nine Tails? That's new, Naruko mused. Hey, I'll let you be my boss. Konohamaru offered proudly, then added, in exchange, you have to teach me that transformation technique you used to surprise Grandpa. Please. He clung to her legs, unleashing the full power of a pleading expression. Naruko chuckled, remembering all the mischief they'd gotten into together using that exact technique, and how many people had fallen for it. Why not, kid? She smiled, leading him off to begin their lesson. Hold the image clearly in your head, she instructed. Unlike a basic transformation, this one physically changes your body. It uses more chakra, but it's much harder for others to detect or break. Did you create it yourself, boss? Yep. Took me hours to adjust the standard technique. Wow. I'm going to master it. Henge. Naruko blinked. Cancel it. Try again. That one wasn't quite right. A little more elegance. More grace. And so, the training continued, each attempt improving just a little. During a break, as they sat together on a log, Naruko asked, By the way, why are you so determined to challenge your grandfather? Konohamaru looked down, then finally spoke. Grandpa named me Konohamaru. I'm named after our village. But nobody ever really calls me that like it's my name. When people see me, they don't see me, they see the Hokage's grandson. I want people to recognize me for who I am. That's why I want the title of Hokage. Naruko let out a breath. You've got a lot to learn. Huh? You can't just declare yourself Hokage and expect people to accept it. What? It's not that simple. If you want to be Hokage, you'll need to prove yourself, starting with me. Beat me in a match first, Naruko said with a confident smile that seemed to shine with determination. Konohamaru's eyes widened, then narrowed with focus. Suddenly, a calm voice cut in from above. There you are. Naruko looked up to see Ebisu standing coolly on a tree branch. His eyes still held caution, but Naruko promised herself one day that look would be different, filled with trust instead. Ebisu leapt down. Honorable grandson, it's time to return. No. Watch this. Transformation technique, Konohamaru shouted. The result was flawless. Naruko had to admit she was proud of how quickly he learned. Ebisu, however, was not impressed. What an inappropriate technique. As a refined tutor, I would never fall for something so superficial. If you keep associating with her, you'll never progress. I'm your best chance at becoming Hokage. Now let's go. No. Boss. Konohamaru called out. You're wrong, Naruko told Ebisu, her voice calm but firm. Her heart raced, but her message was clear. The Hokage title is an honor. You don't just train for it like it's a job. You have to love this village with all your heart. Only when the people recognize your dedication do you earn the title. It's not something you gain just by wanting it, it's something you must live up to. Both Konohamaru and Ebisu turned to look at her, and for a moment, Naruko thought she saw a tiny flicker of approval in Ebisu's eyes. Stop acting like you're my boss, Konohamaru declared boldly. From now on, we're rivals. He crossed the field, standing tall across from Naruko, their eyes locking with mutual respect. I'll be waiting, Konohamaru, Naruko replied with a confident nod. Then she turned to Ebisu. Did I hear something about that technique being too simple for you? Ebisu raised an eyebrow. I never challenged you. Oh really? It sounded like you did. Konohamaru, count this as a win for me. Shadow clone technique. For the first time since her arrival in this time, Naruko formed the hand signs. With a puff of smoke, 30 identical Narukos appeared, surrounding Ebisu. The Hokage, observing from afar, nearly dropped his pipe. He had no idea she had mastered such a skill. Ebisu's eyes went wide, though he quickly composed himself. I am an elite tutor, he said with forced calm. I can handle 30 clones if I must. Sure, Naruko smirked playfully. Transformation technique. In unison, all 30 clones transformed into cheerful, charismatic women with swirling smoke placed modestly. Ebisu froze, utterly flustered, and with a loud yelp, was launched off the field, leaving behind a swirl of dust. Naruko dissolved her clones and burst into laughter. It felt amazing to let loose again with a good prank. Back at the Hokage's office, the third leaned against his desk with a groan, ignoring the calls of his guards. Why do I get the feeling that technique is going to haunt me? Naruko took a steady breath as she pushed the door open and stepped inside. The room buzzed with laughter and chatter, a sound that brought a wave of emotion over her. She had traveled through time, somehow, and everyone was here. Safe, happy, and full of life. That's how it was going to stay. She scanned the familiar faces of her classmates, her chest tightening with emotion. They were all so young. So full of hope. It was almost surreal. She stepped inside quietly, without her usual energy, emotions swirling in her mind about everything she knew that might come. Huh? Naruko, what are you doing here? Only those who passed are supposed to be here. Hey, can't you see the forehead protector? Naruko replied with a smile, flicking it playfully with her thumb. The other student gave her a skeptical look, but before anything else could be said, a familiar voice broke through the noise. Excuse me, can I get through? Sakura. Future top-tier medical ninja, a brilliant healer, and once an enthusiastic fan of a certain teammate. Naruko turned, trying to keep her swirling emotions in check, relief, happiness, nostalgia, and pride all fighting for space in her heart. Move over, Naruko. I want the seat on your other side. Sakura huffed with a playful glare. Naruko grinned but raised an eyebrow. Did she still have the same seat? She had picked one at random to avoid repeating past mistakes. She turned and caught sight of a boy with dark hair in the corner seat. Sasuke. Future Sharingan expert, powerful summoner, and a person with a long journey ahead. Sasuke gave her a mildly annoyed glance, and Naruko felt a quiet determination build inside her. This time, she'd make sure their team stayed together. This time, things would be different. Better. Before she could decide whether to talk to Sakura or Sasuke first, Sakura made the decision for her by quickly slipping past Naruko to reach Sasuke. Sasuke. Can I sit next to you? She asked with excitement. Sasuke didn't respond, but also didn't object, which Sakura seemed to take as approval. Naruko, meanwhile, stayed firmly planted in her seat, hands gripping the sides in an effort to stay composed and focused. She wasn't going to repeat old patterns. Not this time. A moment later, Their instructor Iruka entered the room, drawing everyone's attention. "Starting today, you are all officially ninjas," Iruka announced, his tone firm and full of pride. "But remember, you're still rookies. The real challenges are just beginning. You'll now begin taking missions assigned by the village, under the guidance of a Jonin sensei. We've formed the teams by balancing different strengths." Naruko's heart beat faster. Team 7. Would they still be together? She glanced over at her future teammates. Sakura was silently wishing with all her might, and Sasuke looked like he was already over everything. Some things, it seemed, didn't change. Team 7, Iruka called out. Haruno Sakura, Uzumaki Naruko. Sakura let out a groan and slumped in her seat, and Uchiha Sasuke. A second later, she shot up with a cheer of excitement. Sasuke, in contrast, closed his eyes with a long-suffering sigh. Naruko laughed inwardly. Oh yeah. This was going to be interesting. Iruka-sensei. Why does a skilled ninja like me have to be on a team with him? Naruko stood and pointed dramatically toward Sasuke, who didn't even blink. Iruka folded his arms and answered without missing a beat. Sasuke had the top scores out of all 27 graduates. Naruko. You had the lowest. We balanced the teams based on individual strengths. Just don't slow me down, last place, Sasuke said calmly. Naruko narrowed her eyes at him but didn't react too strongly. No need to overdo it. She flopped back into her seat with a small pout just for show. Iruka raised an eyebrow, noting that Naruko hadn't snapped back like usual. Maybe she was finally starting to grow? All right, Iruka concluded. We'll introduce your Jonin senseis this afternoon. Take a break until then. Naruko's cheeks turned a little pink as she remembered the silly things she did the first time around. Things were different now. Sakura felt more like a sister. No way was she doing anything embarrassing again. Hey, she said brightly, turning to the others, want to eat lunch as a team? Sasuke raised an eyebrow at her and walked away without a word. Sakura trailed behind him, almost as if she were tethered, not even sparing Naruko a response. A flicker of hurt settled in Naruko's chest. Was it too much to expect a simple answer from her teammates? She swallowed the feeling and moved on. If they didn't want to join her, she could still use the time to prepare for the next day. Grabbing a quick sandwich from her bag, she munched as she jogged toward Training Ground 7, the place where everything had started. She approached quietly, just in case anyone else was using it. Naruko crept in, her ears alert to any sound. When nothing stirred, she relaxed and quickly got to work. She pulled out various tools, wires, markers, tags, and began setting up. There wasn't much time. Should she use actual training tools or substitute them with shadow clone versions? Could they last through the night? No, better to stick with real materials to avoid any surprises. Naruko worked fast, arranging harmless traps using practice kunai, wire mechanisms, decoys, and clever distractions, the kind that would test reaction skills without causing harm. She set everything up in a pattern around the spot she remembered Kakashi-sensei frequenting. Thankfully, he hadn't moved around much during their first meeting. Unbeknownst to her, Kakashi was already there, perched silently in a nearby tree. He had just finished reflecting at the memorial stone and was preparing to report to the Hokage when Naruko had unexpectedly shown up. With the refined stillness of an experienced shinobi, he masked his presence, recalling that the Uzumaki family was known for its strong chakra sensing abilities. He watched with amusement as Naruko carefully assembled her setup. How had she known he would be using this spot? Then again, Training Ground 7 for Team 7 wasn't much of a stretch. Kakashi tilted his head, intrigued. It was a solid plan, thoughtful, resourceful, and the kind of tactical thinking shinobi were trained for. While the traps wouldn't catch him off guard, the effort impressed him. Despite himself, Kakashi chuckled softly at her colorfully mismatched clothing. Subtlety might need some work. Was this really the same girl who'd been labeled the lowest ranked? He hummed with interest before silently disappearing, already looking forward to tomorrow's meeting. Maybe this year, he'd find a team worth guiding. Naruko exhaled deeply as she completed the last of the traps. Everything looked set. Now she just needed to head back and... Oh wait. This was Kakashi-sensei she was talking about. She still had a solid 3 hours to spare. With a stretch, she wandered off toward the academy to meet up with her team. Kakashi stared quietly at Naruko's apartment. It was a surprising contrast to the clever student he'd observed earlier. The place was cluttered, plants sat haphazardly by the windows with soil spilling onto the floor, and a faint sour smell hinted that something in the fridge had expired a while ago. It didn't quite match the calculated girl he'd just watched laying traps. So this is Naruko's home, he murmured, hiding his surprise. Yes, said the accompanying shinobi. She can be a bit impulsive, but I think she might do well with you. You've always had a knack for bringing out hidden potential. Oh, and your team also includes Sasuke Uchiha, good luck. Understood. Planning to show up late again? The Hokage asked, raising an eyebrow. Kakashi gave a relaxed shrug. Not more than usual. The Hokage sighed, at least introduce yourself properly before you show them your unique style of teaching. Kakashi paused, turning his head sharply. Wait. They don't know who their Jonin instructor is yet? They find out when the Jonin meet their teams, the Hokage explained. Why? Kakashi's gaze dropped to a nearby milk carton, his expression hidden but clearly amused. Because Naruko already snuck into Training Ground 7 to set up an ambush. They shared a knowing look, and Kakashi smiled beneath his mask. This will be interesting. Sasuke sat silently, clearly irritated. Sakura looked just as impatient. Meanwhile, Naruko tried to distract herself by attempting chakra exercises, specifically, slicing a leaf using wind chakra. Each time, though, she overdid it, causing the leaf to burst apart instead of split cleanly. Her hair carried a slight scent of singeing from repeated failures, and the odd looks from her teammates didn't help her mood. What are you even doing? Sakura finally asked, her tone exasperated. Naruko tried to keep calm, missing the old version of her friend, the one who used to be patient, thoughtful, and strong. This Sakura felt like a shadow of that. Wind training, Naruko replied with an exaggerated, bright grin. Where'd you even learn that? Sakura huffed, clearly not buying the smile. A friend taught me, Naruko answered more gently, eyes softening as she remembered Yamato and Kakashi's constant back and forth during training. Sakura noticed the change in her expression and, to Naruko's surprise, decided not to respond with another jab. Can you show me? Sakura asked, sitting across from her. Naruko blinked in surprise. She'd expected a dismissal or sarcasm, not curiosity. Really? You want to learn? She asked, genuinely caught off guard. No offense, Sakura. She glanced at him briefly before shifting her eyes to the side, cheeks faintly pink as she looked at Sasuke. Oh, now that made more sense. She wanted to impress him, with her perseverance and dedication. Sasuke half rolled his eyes, though a part of him was amused. Things were definitely shifting. Elemental training isn't something you just pick up overnight, Naruko, Sasuke said smoothly. You might even be focusing on the wrong element. The wrong element? Sakura blinked in surprise, turning to Naruko. But I thought ninjas could learn most of them? Naruko nodded. Yeah, they can. But every ninja tends to have one element that comes more naturally to them. I'm pretty sure. She gave a small smile. Mine's wind. What about yours, Sasuke? Sakura asked with interest. I bet it's something really strong. I'm not sure, Sasuke replied after a short pause, clearly reluctant to admit it. Fire and lightning, Naruko chimed in casually, her legs swinging as she sat. Sakura looked up in surprise. Really? Sasuke narrowed his eyes at her, and how do you figure that, Naruko? Well, she began, the Uchiha clan is known for their fire affinity. But you feel more like someone who connects with lightning, too. Wow, Sasuke, that's impressive. You have too? Sakura exclaimed. What about me? Naruko glanced at her thoughtfully. Fire. Fire? Both Sakura and Sasuke echoed, clearly caught off guard. Yep. Though I don't know the training exercise for it. And I doubt Sasuke does either, Naruko added honestly. An awkward silence settled among them after that, and 2 more hours passed in uneventful quiet. Eventually, Naruko checked the time and slid off her seat. The other two immediately turned to look at her. There was no point in using a chalk eraser again, this time, it wouldn't show on their teacher's hair. But she had a different plan. With a mischievous grin, Naruko dabbed an eraser with ink from a nearby pot and tucked it carefully into the crack of the classroom door. I'm not part of this, Sakura said quickly. As if a jonin would fall for something so simple, Sasuke remarked coolly. Just then, the door creaked open, and a hand pushed it wide. The 3 Jonin watched with wide eyes as the ink-stained eraser dropped onto their silver-haired teacher, Hatake Kakashi. The trap had worked even better than Naruko expected. Kakashi flinched slightly under his mask, clearly surprised. Naruko burst out laughing. Ha ha, you actually fell for it. Even though the laugh bubbled out, it was partly a cover for the emotions she felt seeing her teacher again. Laughter was easier than trying to explain that. Kakashi, ever observant, noticed something off about her reaction. It didn't quite match what he'd seen from her earlier that day on the training grounds. Was she putting on an act? Reminded him of someone from long ago. I'm so sorry, sensei. I tried to stop her, but Naruko, Sakura said hesitantly. Kakashi sighed and picked up the ink-stained eraser. He made a mental note to have a word with the Hokage later. This team reminded him far too much of another one from his past. Sasuke shot him a familiar skeptical glance, and Kakashi exhaled inwardly. He definitely had a challenge ahead. Well then, how should I put this? Kakashi rubbed his chin. I'm not too fond of you three. He watched their reactions carefully. Sasuke didn't move, typical. Sakura looked dismayed. Naruko tilted her head with an innocent expression. That one was hard to read. Meet me on the rooftop in 5 minutes, Kakashi instructed before vanishing in a cloud of smoke, mostly for dramatic effect, and partly to keep Naruko on her toes. He sat casually at the edge of the rooftop, waiting. Sasuke was the first to arrive. Kakashi motioned for him to sit. Naruko and Sakura followed shortly after, taking seats without needing to be told. Alright, let's start with introductions. What kind of things do you want to know? Sakura asked. How about your likes, dislikes, dreams for the future, hobbies, that sort of thing, Kakashi explained. Hey, why don't you go first? Naruko spoke up, raising a curious eyebrow. You look kinda mysterious. Sakura nodded in agreement. Yeah, it would help us get to know you better. Kakashi chuckled internally. Mysterious? He liked that. Though he couldn't help but find their reactions amusing. Well, my name's Hatake Kakashi. I'm not really interested in sharing my likes or dislikes. As for my dreams, I haven't thought much about it. I do have a lot of hobbies though. Naruko suppressed a giggle. Kakashi hadn't changed at all. She remembered him giving a similar speech once to a noble client, leaving the poor person completely baffled. So basically, all we learned was his name, Sakura whispered, disappointed. Alright, your turn. Let's go from the right, Kakashi said, pointing to Naruko. You're up, Blondie. Naruko rolled her eyes with a playful grin. My name is Uzumaki Naruko. Like the whirlpool, not the ramen topping, though I love that too. Especially when Iruka-sensei treats me to cup ramen. What I don't like is waiting 3 whole minutes for it to cook. Kakashi resisted the urge to sigh. He had hoped Naruko would say something that proved her playful attitude was just a cover for something deeper. My dream. Naruko's tone shifted as her expression became focused. Is to help create a new era for all ninja. The confidence in her voice sent a quiet wave through the group. Kakashi's eye widened for a moment before softening. Naruko was turning out to be a fascinating student. Hobbies? I guess. Pulling harmless pranks, she added with a shrug, easing the tension she had unintentionally stirred. I see, Kakashi murmured thoughtfully. Next. Interesting, he thought. A visionary. My name is Uchiha Sasuke. There are a lot of things I dislike, but not much that I like. And I wouldn't call it a dream, but I have a strong ambition. I want to restore my clan and face someone from my past. His voice dropped slightly as he focused inward. Kakashi glanced at him sideways. A dreamer and someone driven by a deep sense of purpose. What an unusual group, he thought. And finally, you? I'm Haruno Sakura. The thing I like is. Well, the person I like is. Should I say it? Her cheeks reddened. My dream for the future. Oh my. The thing I dislike. Is Naruko. Naruko frowned slightly, and even Kakashi looked mildly uncomfortable. My hobby is. Sakura cast a series of quick, nervous glances toward Sasuke. A visionary, someone with ambition, and a girl with a crush, Kakashi mused. And they're being taught by someone who really just wanted to enjoy a peaceful afternoon. Alright. That's enough introductions, he said with a cheerful eye smile. We'll begin our real duties tomorrow. But first, there's something we'll do as a team. He chuckled inwardly, pleased when no one gave him a suspicious glare. What is it? Sasuke asked cautiously. Team survival training, Kakashi said casually, letting the words settle. The shift in the group's mood was immediate. Why is training part of our first mission? Sasuke asked, a bit puzzled. We already did plenty of training at the academy, Sakura added. Where? Naruko chimed in, her question making everyone pause. Kakashi narrowed his eye thoughtfully. Shinin weren't usually the ones to question vague orders. I'll be your opponent, Kakashi explained. But this won't be ordinary training. What kind of training is it then? Sakura asked, now curious. Kakashi gave a soft chuckle. He didn't need to raise his voice. Just a subtle, serious air was enough to let them know this wasn't going to be easy. He noticed two of his students tense slightly in response. The third, Naruko, remained calm and even smiled. No surprise there, her energy seemed untouched by this kind of pressure. What's so funny? Sasuke asked sharply. Well, it's just that once I tell you, I think you'll be quite surprised, Kakashi replied, a knowing look in his visible eye. Naruko tilted her head. She didn't remember him being this intense last time. Something about the seriousness in his voice was new. And slightly unnerving. Out of the 27 academy graduates, only 9 will actually be chosen to become Genin. The rest will return to the academy. This training is more like a test, with a very high challenge level. He stood with arms folded, his silver hair swaying slightly, casting an impressive silhouette. Naruko glanced at the others and noticed Sakura gulp nervously while Sasuke narrowed his eyes. It was hard not to feel like this pressure was somehow tied to her. She was the only thing that had changed, after all. But what could she have done? Ha ha. Kakashi's laugh was light, but his words carried weight. Told you you'd be surprised. Naruko decided to lighten the mood, maybe by acting a bit silly, just like before. What? But we worked so hard to graduate. What was the point of all that? She shouted, exaggerating her distress. It didn't help. Oh. That? Kakashi responded coolly. Graduation was just to narrow down those who might be ready. This next step is to see who truly has the potential to become a Genin. His words were calm, but they hit hard. Naruko felt a chill. If she felt it, she knew the others must have too. I'll warn you now, Kakashi continued. A visionary seeking an impossible goal, an avenger after the loftiest ambition, a fangirl without any convictions has no place in the shinobi forces. I will not blame you if you decide not to show up tomorrow and end up embarrassed. Konoha has no need of weak individuals, and I refuse to teach beginners. He stared at all of them coolly. Naruko felt a chill form in her stomach. Where was her lazy sensei? Where was her bored sensei? Where was her playful sensei? The person in front of them seemed stern, focused, and distant. She bit her lip. She had to pass. Or the future could change in ways she couldn't predict. Well, she already knew the test, all she had to do was convince the other two to see things her way. Don't bother having breakfast if you decide to show up. You might not be able to keep it down. The details are on this printout, don't be late tomorrow. With that, Kakashi's intense aura vanished, and he returned to his usual self, his bored tone and laid-back attitude. Naruko and her teammates sat frozen, unable to move or speak. The change had been jarring, more unsettling than anything they'd witnessed before. No one dared to say anything. Naruko skimmed the printout, noting the basic information, before carelessly discarding it. When they looked up, Kakashi was already gone. I think we just met the scariest Jonin in Konoha, Sakura whispered. The way he just changed. Higher-ranked nin are often unpredictable, Sasuke commented, his voice low. Sakura stared at him in shock, then glanced back at the spot where their sensei had stood just moments ago. Naruko licked her dry lips. We're going to have a tough time tomorrow. Kakashi leapt over the rooftops, feeling an overwhelming sense of disappointment with his new team. The girl seemed to be just another fan. A top kunoichi? Really? He didn't see the inner strength he had hoped for in her like he did in the others. She might prove to be a hindrance to teamwork, always clinging to one teammate and undermining the other. Judging by her lack of muscle definition, it seemed she didn't train or practice as much as she should have. A kunoichi wearing a dress, and an elegant one at that? It struck him as odd. But it wasn't because she reminded him of Rin, he told himself. Then there was Sasuke. He could believe Sasuke was the rookie of the year. Uchihas were naturally talented in combat, but his obsession with his brother was concerning. The desire for power was evident in the boy's eyes, and Kakashi knew he would need to tread carefully. Sasuke was a loner, and teamwork would not come easily to him, given the pain of losing his family. Kakashi knew this would be a challenge. He could see a younger version of himself in Sasuke, but ultimately, it didn't matter. He didn't feel particularly connected to the boy. Naruko. The most enigmatic member of the team. She seemed to carry immense secrets that could potentially tear the team apart. Kakashi had the distinct feeling that Naruko was used to his quirks, but that was impossible. The only interaction they had shared was him guarding her when she was a child. He didn't trust either of his teammates, and it was clear from the way she kept an eye on both of them. A team built on secrets was bound to fail, and Kakashi was determined to find a way to get Naruko to open up. Though she seemed to mimic Obito's carefree attitude, Kakashi noticed there was an intelligence hidden beneath that demeanor. That was the reason he was most uncertain about Naruko at the moment. She wasn't a direct reflection of his former team, and that made things complicated. He couldn't see the team coming together. Not yet. Naruko arrived on time, just in case the unusual behavior of Kakashi might have also made him punctual. It was a futile hope. Much like the first time, she waited for hours in silence with her team. She didn't want to talk, as her teammates reminded her too much of their future selves. Sasuke was too antisocial to speak, and Sakura felt too intimidated by the underlying tension to break the silence. Naruko could feel the weight of the situation. She knew this silence wasn't helpful for team building, but she pushed that thought aside. She missed her friends from Konoha and even missed Sai and his jokes. That night, she had spent her time drawing scenes from her memory in a quiet, brooding manner. The shift in Kakashi unsettled her. This kind of change was far too soon. "Yo. Good morning." Kakashi cheerfully approached. "You're late," Sasuke remarked. "Late again," Sakura added, while Naruko gave a simple comment of her own. Kakashi flashed his signature smile, but this time, no one smiled back. "Ah, I was delayed while buying a new alarm clock. I may have accidentally damaged my old one with a kunai," he explained, looking thoughtful. "Okay, it's set for noon," he added, clicking on the alarm clock sitting on a nearby stump. The three of them stood silent, clearly confused. Kakashi then held up 2 silver bells. "These are the bells. Your task is to take one of these from me before noon. If you can't, you won't get lunch, and I'll tie you to one of these stumps while I eat." The sound of stomachs growling filled the air. Naruko figured it was better to stay cautious. "You only need 1 bell. There are only 2, so at least one of you will be tied to a stump. The person who doesn't get a bell will be sent back to the academy. So, use whatever strategy you can. You won't succeed unless you approach me with the intent to succeed." Kakashi's single visible eye scanned them all. "Ready?" "Sensei, you couldn't dodge a simple eraser," Naruko said cautiously. Kakashi smirked. "Empty pots make the loudest sounds. Ignore the chatter. Start when I say." "Dead last," Naruko muttered to herself. Just because she had been ranked low didn't mean she lacked talent, but she wasn't foolish enough to try attacking Kakashi head-on with only a kunai. However, she wasn't about to let his comment slide. She had enough of being dismissed. But before she could act on it, Kakashi blurred out of sight. Within milliseconds, Naruko felt her arm twisted back, a kunai pressed against her throat. She froze. "See that? Look at your teammates." Each of them reacted accordingly. "You, on the other hand, are still the dead last," Kakashi said nonchalantly, before releasing her and slipping the kunai back into his pouch. Naruko observed Sasuke, who had immediately gone into a defensive guard, and Sakura, who had raised her arms in a defensive posture. Naruko hadn't reacted in time. Despite her unease, she trusted Kakashi not to harm her. "Acknowledge me, and I'll acknowledge you." Kakashi grinned, patting Naruko on the head. "Now, start." Kakashi seemed determined to face the experienced veteran. "Fine." The 3 genin dispersed, taking cover. Naruko, being the prankster she was, had secretly attached a note to each of their shirts when they weren't paying attention. It read, "Mind the traps. It's a test of teamwork. I have a plan. Naruko." Sasuke read the note and raised an eyebrow, silently impressed by Kakashi's ability to mimic Naruko's handwriting. But Sasuke wasn't easily fooled. Naruko couldn't spell to save her life, so he discarded the note as a mere distraction. His focus remained on getting the bell for himself. Working with Sakura would be a burden, and Naruko was the last person he needed on his team. Sakura pondered the note. While genin teams typically had 4 members, she had seen teams of 3 in Konoha. Maybe Naruko had a point, but working with Naruko meant Sasuke might fail. She couldn't let that happen. She decided to stick with Sasuke. Meanwhile, Naruko hid under a bush, hoping her teammates might take the note seriously. After a while, when she saw no movement toward her, she sighed in resignation. Why did they have to make things so difficult? "Hello, Naruko." Kakashi's cheerful voice came from behind her, startling her so much that she scrambled away as fast as she could. "Good, you've got some instincts," Kakashi smiled, squatting behind the bush. "How? I mean, you were over there," Naruko pointed in the direction where Kakashi clearly wasn't. "Oh. Your hiding spot needs some work, Kakashi observed casually. Is this yours? He held up one of the notes Naruko had written. So, you have a plan? Would you mind showing it to me? I do have a plan, Naruko responded. But I do mind sharing it. Pity. I hope you'll show me your plan when you're trying to avoid getting hit. Naruko felt a sense of unease creep down her spine. She took a step back and assumed a defensive stance. Kakashi clicked his tongue in disapproval. Your left foot is too far out, you're hunched over, your right hand should be higher, and your other hand should be lower. If you were older and taller, that stance would be fine. Naruko adjusted her position and immediately felt more comfortable. She hadn't realized how her old habits had carried over, which made learning taijutsu more challenging than she had anticipated. The weak point of the stance, came Kakashi's voice from behind her. Oh, not again. Is right here. 2 fingers pressed gently against her neck, and she immediately collapsed, gripping her neck. She looked up to see Kakashi studying her fallen form with a curious expression. I suppose I'll have to take it easy on you, he sighed. You are the last one after all. There was a gleam in his single visible eye that Naruko didn't quite trust. Kakashi reached into his pouch, then paused. Hey, if I told you, you could become a Genin if you tell me which of your 2 teammates deserves to go back, who would you say? What? Naruko asked, confused. I saw your trap-making skills yesterday, and how you gathered information. You figured out the purpose of this test. You're at the Genin level. So, who would you send back? Don't be shy. I wouldn't, Naruko stammered, still unsure. Kakashi's eye flickered with disappointment. I see. Inability to make quick decisions is a serious setback. Maybe I was wrong about you having redeeming qualities. You're not quite at Genin level yet. You just said I had good trap-making and information-gathering skills. Naruko protested, frustrated. Kakashi rolled his eye. The mindset of a Genin is more important than the skills themselves. I don't care what you can or can't do, what matters is what you're willing to do. And, anyway, I was being nice. Though his tone was familiar, the meaning behind it stung more than she expected. Show me why you deserve to be on this team, Kakashi continued, his tone firm. Sasuke is a genius, and Sakura has the potential to be great. You're the last one, you're the weight. Kakashi took up his stance, and Naruko noticed his book was nowhere to be seen. Why was he acting so differently? This harshness wasn't like him at all. Kakashi struck her with a powerful blow to the solar plexus. Naruko didn't have time to block, and she gasped as the air was knocked out of her and she stumbled back. Before she could recover, Kakashi landed a swift kick to her side, sending her crashing into a tree. Her side throbbed with pain, and she curled up, trying to gather herself before pushing herself to her feet. Kakashi stood still, watching her. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, she whispered, forcing herself to stay focused. 50 copies of Naruko appeared around the clearing and began attacking Kakashi, who, surprise, wasn't there anymore. He had used a substitution jutsu, switching places with the original Naruko so the clones absorbed the hits meant for him. Think before you use a jutsu, or it will be used against you, Kakashi commented casually, dispelling a clone with a quick chop to the throat. Naruko gritted her teeth. She couldn't keep up with Kakashi. The man was too skilled, and it was clear he wasn't holding back. I cleared it with the Hokage, he added with a smirk. I can do whatever I want to you guys. Isn't that fun? No. You broke something, Naruko exclaimed, clutching her side. Ma, it'll heal, Kakashi said, rubbing his chin thoughtfully. You've got the QB, after all. Pretty much everything I do to you will heal quickly. Naruko's clone circled him cautiously. Don't tell me you're giving up on the mission already. The bells are right here. He pointed to his side. You must think I'm foolish if you think I'm going to rush in like a reckless fool, Naruko growled. I do think you're foolish, Kakashi replied, but you haven't realized that it's a genjutsu yet. What? Naruko blinked, trying to make sense of it. Kai, she shouted, but nothing happened. Arg. A kunai had been thrown with such precision that it went through both her hands, pinning them together. She felt the pressure shift as the bones moved with the kunai. The pain was intense. I lied, kid, Kakashi said nonchalantly. Sometimes I do that. Rule number 2 of combat, never listen to the enemy. You already broke rule number 1. What's that? Naruko asked, backing off slowly, grimacing as she tried to free her hands. Never get into a fight you can't win, Kakashi said, his tone stern. Come on, Naruko, I did say this was survival training. I get it, Naruko snapped, her patience wearing thin. No, you don't get it, Kakashi responded. You think you get it, but that's not the same as actually understanding it. Get it? He smirked. Naruko's hands trembled as she prepared for her next move, ready to push herself even further. Naruko and her clones swapped positions with each other several times, until Kakashi lost track of the original. His senses were sharp, but this time, he couldn't pinpoint the true Naruko. She was too clever. 3 clones approached him in sync, 1 low, 1 mid, and 1 high. Kakashi sighed and grabbed the highest one by the ankle, effortlessly smashing it into the others so that they all dispelled. You'll need to do better than that, he commented, his tone casual but firm. The clones retaliated, furiously piling on top of him, trying to land kicks and punches. Maybe he had pushed Naruko a little too far? Kakashi simply reached into his pouch and pulled out a heavy chain with razor-sharp sickles at both ends. Expertly, he spun it around, cutting through the clones with each strike, dispelling them instantly. Naruko, watching from a distance, hastily summoned more clones, hoping the sheer number would overwhelm Kakashi. But they didn't stand a chance either. A stray swing of the chain caught Naruko on her arm, causing her to cry out in pain. She stumbled, vision blurring from the impact. Stay still, Naruko, Kakashi's voice came from behind her, though she couldn't see him. You still have a long way to go if you wish to become a true ninja. Naruko struggled to stay conscious as she was pinned against a tree, the sickle brushing dangerously close to her neck. Kakashi-sensei? Her voice trembled. She had no idea what was happening anymore. Was she trapped in some kind of illusion? Focus, Naruko, came his calm reply. You may be strong, but you're not there yet. If you want to lead the new generation of ninjas, you'll need more than just power. Please stop, Naruko gasped, her blood pounding in her ears. Kakashi's words stung even more than the pain in her arm. She felt utterly helpless. The pressure of failure weighed heavily on her heart. Kakashi tugged sharply on the chain, causing Naruko to let out a strangled cry. She felt her arm bend painfully, her body overwhelmed by the pressure. But despite the pain, her mind began to clear. Try again, Kakashi said, his tone almost gentle. What do you really want to say to me? Naruko clenched her teeth, summoning all the willpower she had left. I won't give up, she shouted, pushing herself to fight through the pain. With her remaining strength, she swung her left fist, channeling chakra to her arm. The punch hit Kakashi square in the stomach, and though her arm broke under the strain, Kakashi was knocked backward, winded. He let go of the chain, and Naruko collapsed to her knees, gasping for breath. This wasn't real, she told herself. She had to break free of this illusion. Kai, she whispered. The genjutsu shattered. Naruko blinked, staring in disbelief at Kakashi, who was casually reclining, smiling at her. It took you a while, Naruko, Kakashi said, his voice teasing. I got rid of your clones while you were busy with the illusion. You sure have a wild imagination, sensei, Naruko muttered, still trying to make sense of everything that had just happened. You've learned, but you haven't given up on the bells, have you? Kakashi asked, watching her closely. Naruko shook her head, feeling a mix of frustration and determination. I know we won't pass unless we work together. But, we've only got so much time, right? Kakashi gave a small nod. You have 10 minutes left. It's clear you know the answer already, so tell me, why didn't you work with your teammates earlier? Naruko hesitated, then clenched her fists. I didn't trust them. I thought I could do it all alone. Kakashi's gaze softened. No one can do it alone, Naruko. It's not about what you can do on your own, it's about how you work with others. Naruko took a deep breath and looked at her feet. You're right. Good, Kakashi said with a grin. 4 more minutes. Show me what you've got. Naruko felt a flicker of hope. All right, I'll give it my best shot. Kakashi watched her, amusement in his eye. Not everyone can be as perfect as me, but you can always try. Naruko glanced up at him, then winked. I've got something for you. With a burst of chakra, she summoned a cage bunshine. Take this. Kakashi chuckled as Naruko's clones started performing the Oroike no Jutsu, creating an entire crowd of clones in an exaggerated, playful manner. As they clung to him, he was momentarily caught off guard, but he quickly pushed his headband up to reveal his Sharingan, dispelling the jutsu in an instant. Pervert, Naruko said with a grin, though she couldn't help but laugh. Kakashi smiled and held up his Icha book. The bell rang. Kakashi stood there, puzzled. Naruko had endured his most intense genjutsu and handled it with surprising composure. He had expected fear, even anger, but not understanding. Not like this. She had seen through his test and reacted with strength, not only physically, but mentally. And Kakashi couldn't help but feel a strange sense of pride in her growth. Maybe Naruko hadn't even realized she understood, but it was clear from the way she unconsciously fell into a neutral pose. Albeit a much altered neutral pose, the original intention wasn't hard to work out. If anything, the young girl seemed frustrated with herself for falling into the genjutsu in the first place. That was the reaction of an experienced sparring partner, not a fresh rookie Jinan. But it was also clear she was a fresh rookie Jinan. Her skills were underdeveloped in taijutsu and genjutsu, but her ninjutsu wasn't too bad for a Jinan. Her cage bunshine technique had been trickier than she had anticipated though. There had been numerous henge into weapons and random tufts of grass, only for her to almost step on them or be ambushed by the clones. Nothing she couldn't handle easily, of course, but the level of trickery was impressive compared to her teammates. If another village had managed to capture Naruko, extract the Kyuubi, implant the Kyuubi into another girl, and had her return to Konoha disguised as the real Naruko without anyone noticing, they might as well give up entirely. So, she assumed it was the real Naruko. Foxes were known to be masters of deception. Could the fox be influencing Naruko to hide her abilities? She cursed in her mind, the weakening of Naruko's seal was beyond her abilities to fix. What would you have done, Obito? She thought rhetorically, before sighing and resigning herself to try and contact the Toad Sannin as soon as possible. Why was the Seal Master so far away in the opposite end of Fire Country, while the most important potentially unstable seal was in the heart of Fire Country? Maybe she was overreacting? No, she couldn't overreact when the Kyuubi was involved. Her mind turned to her other students. She resisted the urge to fall to her knees and beg for forgiveness from the deity she had apparently upset. Sakura was more of a hindrance than a help at the moment. And she was being generous by saying that. At least Rin had some useful qualities in the beginning. Sasuke was talented. Undeniably talented. Granted, Kakashi hadn't been as hard on him as she had been on Naruko, so Sasuke had the chance to show off his skills more. She really needed to give Naruko that opportunity too, just to see what she could do. She had never fully explained her plan either. There was one key difference between a younger version of herself and Sasuke: she had respected her sensei from the start. Maybe this team wasn't like her old team at all. If they passed, and that was a big if, she needed to sort things out quickly. How on earth had Naruko figured so much out from so little? How on earth had she turned Sakura into a useful member of the ninja corps? How on earth had she curbed Sasuke's obsession with his brother? She was an ex-Onbu captain, she reminded herself. She could handle 3 young students. A light bulb went off in her head. Guy. If that didn't unite them, nothing would. She walked off making plans, unaware that she had already accepted the possibility of them passing. She had an uncomfortable thought: she wouldn't be going to such lengths if her interest hadn't been piqued the day before. Naruko was tied to the stump. Why always her? She was more cheerful than she had been in a while. Kakashi-sensei was unpredictable, sure, but she had finally accepted that she was stuck in this reality. Now, she could stop treating this like a vacation and get to work. Sakura and Sasuke were piles of frustration on either side of her. "Oh, you guys look really hungry," Kakashi said, looking so concerned under his mask. "By the way, something about the training. There's no need for you to return to the academy." Sakura perked up, surprised, and even Sasuke showed some surprise in his eyes. Naruko gathered their experiences had gone as poorly as her own. Then, all 3 of us, Naruko yelled, just because she was so cheerful. Kakashi shoved his hands in his pockets. "Yep, all 3 of you. Should quit as ninjas." Naruko expected that. She just slumped back against the ropes. Sakura and Sasuke gaped at Kakashi in shock and anger. Kakashi stared back, a serious expression in his single visible eye. This wasn't friendly Kakashi anymore, Naruko thought with a gulp. "Quit!" Sakura screeched. "What does that mean?" "Fine, we didn't get the bells, but why do we have to quit?" Naruko asked, irony in her tone. Kakashi shot her an extremely sharp look. She quickly looked away. "Because all of you are just kids who don't deserve to be ninjas," Kakashi said calmly, as though he weren't shattering their dreams. Sasuke couldn't take any more. With a roar, he charged at Kakashi. With blinding speed, Sasuke found himself face down in the dirt, with Kakashi on top of him, his foot on Sasuke's head. "This is why you're just a kid," Kakashi told Sasuke. "Don't step on Sasuke," Sakura yelled. Kakashi unleashed some of his intent. He was satisfied to see Sakura shrink back and Sasuke shift in the dirt. Naruko, however, still didn't react. She glared at the blonde boy. That made him flinch, she noticed grimly. Are you guys underestimating ninjas? Huh? Why do you think you were divided into teams when doing this training? Kakashi barked. Huh? What does that mean? Sakura asked timidly, in the wake of Kakashi's anger. He was furious, one of them knew the answer and wasn't telling. The other two had the answer handed to them but refused to see it. Even Sasuke, who came from a ninja clan, should have figured this out already. Sakura should have picked it up from her readings. If Naruko could figure it out, so could the top 2 ninja in their year. This was not teamwork. There was no trust here. He restrained himself. Basically, you guys are not understanding the answer to this test? He glared at Naruko, practically challenging her to ask what the answer was. He didn't know why Naruko acted like this, but it was going to stop right now. Answer? Sasuke grunted, muffled under Kakashi. He rolled his eyes. Yes, the answer. Which usually helps people pass tests. Kakashi scathingly bit out. When are you going to tell us? Sakura ventured. I'm not. She is. Kakashi nodded at Naruko, who looked like a deer in headlights. Naruko could feel Kakashi's anger building. Normally, he was laid back, but apparently, lack of teamwork set him off. Good to know, she gulped nervously. It's teamwork, she whispered. Exactly. Kakashi looked slightly mollified. The 3 of you working together might have gotten the bells. Sakura burst out, but there are 2 bells. That just makes us fight each other, what teamwork? Of course. This test is purposely set up to make you fight amongst yourselves. The purpose is to see whether you can forget about your own interests and successfully work together under designed circumstances. You didn't give us the chance to work together. Naruko suddenly called out. I gave you 10 minutes. There was an awful lack of cooperation, so I took things into my own hands. It's like that on the battlefield. You work together from the start, or it gets exponentially harder to work together later on. Kakashi looked over all of them. You guys. Sakura, you had the answer given to you, as did Sasuke. Did either of you think it through? You were too concerned with Sasuke, who was far away, instead of Naruko, who you could hear fighting. Naruko, you gave your teammates one chance, then abandoned them. Sasuke. You assumed everyone else would get in your way and tried to do everything yourself, and failed. The duties are done by the team. Of course, superior individual ability is important to a ninja, but what's more important is teamwork. Kakashi reached back into his pouch. Naruko tensed, and Kakashi sent her a curiously approving look. Individual play that disrupts the team can put your comrades in danger. And even get you hurt. For example. He whipped out a kunai, immobilized Sasuke, and pressed it to his neck. Sakura. Make a choice. Kill Naruko. Or Sasuke suffers. That sort of choice has consequences no matter what you do, Naruko roared, drowning out Sakura's what? Exactly. If a hostage is taken, you'll face tough choices. You'll risk your lives in these duties. Kakashi climbed off Sasuke, tucking away his kunai. He walked over to a stone with numerous names carved into it. Naruko took a sharp breath. The stone had been destroyed during Pain's invasion, and most of the names had been forgotten. But here it was, whole and sound. Look at this. There are lots of names carved onto this stone. These are the ninjas who are recognized as heroes of the village. Naruko looked away. How many had died in the war without having their name etched on the memorial? All of these heroes died in the line of duty. This is a memorial. My best friend's name is also carved here. He wasn't much of a friend, Kakashi-sensei, Naruko thought, thinking of Obito and his tragic story. It would have been better if you had left him to complete your mission. Then he could have died as a proud shinobi. Kakashi turned halfway to face them. I'll give you one more chance. But after lunch, I'll make it even tougher to get the bells. Those who still wish to challenge can eat lunch. But don't give any to Naruko. Why? She yelped. Because your traps were so distracting, I had to spend time throwing your clones around just to get rid of them. If anyone gives her any food, they will fail immediately. I am the one who sets the rules here. Understood? Kakashi disappeared with a swift leap. Oh, so that's what happened to my carefully set traps, Naruko pouted. It's fine, guys. I don't need any food, Naruko said calmly, even though her stomach betrayed her. She ignored it. They would have to willingly give up their food if Naruko were to consider working with them. What did Sensei do to you? Naruko asked, breaking the silence as the others ate. Sakura swallowed and then said, "Genjutsu," to show Sasuke's disembodied head. She blushed. I passed out, and when I woke up, I saw Sasuke buried up to his neck. By the time I got him out, the time was up. Sasuke responded, slightly embarrassed, "We had a ninjutsu battle after a taijutsu won. It left me stuck in the ground," he admitted. Naruko whistled, "You had a ninjutsu battle with Konoha's ninjutsu expert? I'm surprised you're not more hurt. He beat me with taijutsu and genjutsu." "Naruko, you're not great at taijutsu, so it probably wasn't that bad, just humiliating," Sakura pointed out. Naruko shook her head, "He kicked me into a tree. Believe me, trees are tough." It seemed Kakashi had been gentler with the other two, but why had he been so harsh with Naruko? It wasn't because Kakashi disliked her, her father had taught him. The only explanation was that Kakashi was testing her, unsure if she was truly ready. A Genin would struggle against Kakashi's Sharingan, and she had proven she was outclassed in many ways. Why was Kakashi so suspicious? The traps in the training field had revealed her secret, she wasn't the dead last anymore. She groaned, and Sakura and Sasuke mistook it for hunger and despair. "Here," Sasuke said suddenly, holding out his lunch to Naruko. Naruko blinked, then smiled hesitantly. "Hey, Sasuke, Sensei just said. Don't worry. I can't sense him around here. After lunch, we'll work together to get the bells. Without food, he'd just be in the way, and that would only hurt us," Sasuke explained. Sakura bit her lip and, after a moment, thrust her lunch towards Naruko as well. "Thank you, guys." Naruko smiled. He. Kakashi leaned against a tree, out of view from his Genin, smiling beneath his mask. Time for some fun. Suddenly, thunder boomed, and a fierce wind picked up, blowing dust and smoke into their eyes. They coughed and rubbed their eyes. Kakashi appeared amidst a storm of flashing lightning, radiating a powerful aura. His presence was intimidating. Sakura huddled in fear, Sasuke froze, and Naruko instinctively bared her teeth at the source of the overwhelming intent. Kakashi glared at all three of them, making them imagine their own demise. "You guys." The wind calmed, the lightning faded, and the thunder subsided. "Pass." "Hey," Kakashi smiled under his mask, still holding his menacing pose. "Has anyone told you how incredibly disturbing that is, Sensei?" Naruko managed to ask. "Pass? But why?" Sakura slowly uncurled herself, still trembling. Kakashi patted her head to help her recover, but when it was Sasuke's turn, he shook Kakashi's hand away. "You three are the first ones to react this way," Kakashi said with a slight grin. "Huh?" they asked in confusion. Everyone else just obeyed without question. They were predictable, Kakashi said with some derision. "A ninja must see beneath the surface. Those who break the rules of the ninja world are called trash. But those who fail to care for their comrades? They're even worse. They're lower than trash." Kakashi imparted his most important rule to them, winking at Naruko, who shook her head, realizing the little test within the test. "That concludes the training. You all pass. Tomorrow, Team 7 begins its duties." Kakashi's mood lifted again. He was pleased. He had a team, even if they were not exactly perfect. Yet, he had a lot to talk about with his blonde Genin. "You two go home. I need to have a word with Naruko about her attire," Kakashi said, waving off Sakura and Sasuke. The two walked off, with Sakura laughing and Sasuke smirking. "I'm perfect as I am, Sensei," Naruko replied, knowing exactly what Kakashi would bring up. "It'll interfere with the team's performance," Kakashi countered. "Those baggy layers of clothing don't allow for efficient movement. Your combat effectiveness will decrease." "People will underestimate me," Naruko said, wetting her lips. "People will target you first, thinking you're the weakest link in the team," Kakashi corrected. "Did you mean what you said earlier when you tested me?" Naruko asked seriously, wanting clarity on Kakashi's earlier words. "No matter how strong a chain is, there's always a weakest link," Kakashi murmured. "Poor craftsmanship, weak fittings." Naruko nodded, "I'm used to these clothes, and they're comfortable. Give some new clothes a chance." "You might be surprised," Kakashi said, rolling his eyes. "I'm not saying you have to wear something drastic, just try more form-fitting clothes in natural colors." Naruko laughed, "I think people would be shocked to see me out of my trademark suit." "They'll get used to it," Kakashi said firmly. "Small changes," Naruko emphasized. "Why did you even wear the orange suit if you didn't like it?" Kakashi casually asked, his mind whirring. Naruko looked offended. "I do like it. I just got tired of seeing the same color every day. By the time I wanted to change, I couldn't. Why not? Kakashi pressed further. Naruko gave him a knowing look. You're pushing me on my clothes, but imagine how people would react if I showed up in something else after all this time. People mature quickly in their ninja careers. Not overnight, came Naruko's quick reply. Better to embrace the truth immediately than to hold on to falsehoods for a few weeks. We're ninja, deception is part of our role. You've been a Genin for just 5 minutes, so I'll let you slide on the whole lying thing. But I'm really good at it. Not good enough that I didn't catch on. You're a Jonin. That doesn't count. Was Naruko pouting? Kakashi couldn't help but laugh. Come on, Naruko, I'm going to take you around town until we find you some better ninja gear. Eh? You know, as we were discussing earlier. Kakashi gave her a smile and twirled a kunai, cutting through the ropes. I don't mind if you wear that jumpsuit when we're off duty, but when we're working as a team, you need to wear something more appropriate. Shouldn't you be saying the same thing to Sakura? Yup, Naruko was definitely sulking now. Sakura doesn't have the same issue as you. With that, Kakashi lifted Naruko, holding her under one arm, and continued reading his book as Naruko let out a dramatic cry. Dear YouTube family, that's all for now. Please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Thank you. Regards. 6 Path Weeb.